All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to the first episode of the K&B Podcast. This podcast, we're going to discuss topics related to being a house music producer in 2022, and we're mostly going to be focusing on things behind the DAW. So those are things that are not really technical in production knowledge, but more what it's like to be an artist and make tech house and house music in today's age. So before we get started, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Westend. I'm one of the founders and head coaches at K&B. K&B is a music production community where you can get feedback on your music, watch tutorials from a bunch of our guest coaches and myself, and be part of an amazing community of tech house producers that are all trying to get better at making music. So without further ado, I would also like to introduce some of our guest coaches from K&B who are also going to be on the podcast with us. So first up, we have Muus. If you'd like to do a quick introduction.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Michael, also known as Muus. I've been producing electronic music for about 2 years now, I'd say. Had some releases on Repopulate Mars and Techni and Solo Toco, things like that. But yeah, K&B is a really dope community. Happy to be a part of it. And yeah, that's about it.
Happy to have you, Ben. Heider, you want to go?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is Heider. I've been producing music for about, I don't know, maybe 8 years, something like that. I've been taking it seriously the past few, though. I've released on Techni, Terms and Condition, Club Sweat, Two Room, some other labels. And yeah, I'm also a label owner and the promoter. And yeah, I'm part of the K&B team as a coach. I love it. What else to say?
Cool. You got it. Knocked it out the park. Millean, you want to go?
Yeah, man. So I'm Millean. I'm from the Netherlands, and I've been producing for about 7 years or something. I've been releasing independently with a friend of mine on his little independent label. But recently I've released on Musical Freedom. And I got one lined up for Spinning Deep as well. And yeah, I am a feedback coach in K&B. I make a video here and there sometimes. And yeah, I teach production at like a production school in the Netherlands, which is cool also. So yeah.
Awesome, guys. So it's kind of crazy how we're all just like, started as producers and now are involved in music education. And I think it's like super awesome that, we're all working together in K&B. But I wanted to kind of get started on today's topic and subject, which is going to be finding your sound as an artist. I know this is like an area that a lot of people talk about. Sometimes people will say, oh, this artist has a particular sound. And, a lot of times when I work with like newer producers, they kind of ask like the importance of having your own recognizable sound as a music producer. So I kind of wanted to focus today's discussion on that and kind of just like get the conversation started. Like, I wanted to see what you guys think it means for an artist to have a sound. What the definition of that is in your head. So if anyone wants to kind of start the convo off.
Well, like having your own sound, I mean, it could mean a couple of things, but I feel like you have in general like two streams. Yeah, like people or producers or artists or whatever you want to call it that have like a sound because they have this thing they do, like they always use this lead synth or they always use this style of synthesis or whatever. Think of like I don't know, Marshmello. He had all this like super sawy leads and it was like happy trap things, and he did that every song. But you also have producers like Chris Lake, for example, is like doesn't really have like one sound or one specific lead thingy that he used all the time. It's more like just the production, Yeah, it's just
it's like
you can
vibe,
hear it.
kind of.
Yeah, it's more of a vibe. It's more like a songwriting perspective that you can hear that it's his song, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, no, I think I've watched a lot of interviews of Chris, and you're right. Like when you listen to Chris Lake songs, like sometimes you can be like, oh, there's like a similarity in sounds, but it's not like the same preset that you hear in every track. And like one thing I remember hearing from his interviews is like he likes to use a lot of like sounds and samples that are kind of like imperfect. Like it doesn't have this very like polished feeling to it. And so it kind of has this like this rawness to his music, but it also does have like that polished aspect because it is like very well made. And it's like, so I guess you could say his sound is kind of the combination of like those two things versus like I think a Marshmallow is a great example. It's like when he first started putting out music, like every song, was kind of like the same formula of this like this like happy trap, as you said. So it's like we can also see that like genres, apply to people's sound, which is like another interesting thing. Anyone else on like the definition of?
Yeah, I think it's many things actually. It's like little things in the arrangement, like Millean was saying, or maybe like the way they build the drums, or how the track develops. I would say, for example, I remember Biscuits when it first was coming out. He always had that like first the first bar in the drop, which only had like kick and bass. And that became a thing. Or also, for example, Ellie Brown, who did like those breakdowns with just bass and kick. Yeah. And everybody started doing that because it was working really well. But that was like kind of a staple thing for him, let's say.
It's interesting because it's like almost any part of like the production process, like whether it's like arrangement or like sound design, or even like the way that like you maybe like mix a record. Like, I've listened to some Eli Brown records and he does like some very specific panning of sounds. Like you'll always have like the hi-hat, like the 16th note hi-hat kind of like on the left side. Or like you're right, like the 1 bar gap, like right after the drop where it's like, you put a synth there or something. Like you can just have like kind of like templates as well that help to define your sound. Which is
I think it's something you do subconsciously, mainly. It's not like something that you go out of your way to do. It's something that you just do when you make music, and it becomes like a signature thing for you. I think that's what your sound is.
But it's important that you don't like chase it too much, because you should be thinking about it, obviously, but like you said, it's something that you do subconsciously when you're just making music, like you're making decisions. And I do feel like people, when they start, I certainly did when I started, I felt like I needed like some gimmick, like something that I was always doing in order to for people to hear, oh, that's my production. So I was like trying out some things, and I'll just do this in every production. But in the end, you can't really choose. Well, you can technically, but in my experience, it doesn't really work to say, oh, this is going to be my thing. And you kind of just have to feel it out, and your thing will like just happen. I think.
Happen.
Yeah. I think like when I like first kind of started like really finishing tracks, I like really like stressed myself out thinking that like, oh my God, like I need to use like the same hi-hat sample and I need to use the same like reverb on every clap. But like I realized that like not thinking about it is like better time spent, just because like as you get reps in Ableton, you just tend to do things like over and over, like whether you realize it or not. So I just found that when I didn't focus on that, I actually ended up like making shit that all kind of like sounded like a little bit cohesive, just because like, there's a million ways to like EQ things in Ableton. There's a million ways to do everything, So even just like down to like the little like micro stuff that you do, just I think adds to like your process and your sound and kind of whatever you're able to shit out in Ableton, so.
Like when you guys produce, like, are you, if you go down to like write a record, are you guys like kind of like actively thinking, at some point like, oh, how do I add that like Millean flair, or how do I add that like kind of like Westend signature sound? Or do you guys just kind of like produce, do your thing, take your inspiration from wherever, and like not really like think about that or worry about that at the end of the track?
What I usually do is I look at other tracks and maybe catch a vibe from those and try to recreate it in my way. Because for the years that I've been producing, I've kind of developed my own workflow. And this is something I stress out with like the students when we do the private lessons. you kind of have to develop a workflow and then apply that to streamline all your production process. So I think that's the best way, or the way that works best for me, at least, is I need to know what I'm going for, but then I'm going to do it my way, you know.
So you just kind of have like your own workflow that, you know, you kind of use for every track, and like in the process of that workflow, or maybe not every track, but, you know, for whatever the average track that you make, and like in the process of just going through that kind of, you know, maybe not step-by-step process, but, you know, the workflow of it, you kind of like inject your own sound into the track, because it's like you do your hats this way, and then you do this, and then do that, and it's like that just ends up being your sound. I think that for me,
have
it's
a general blueprint.
Yeah,
I have a general blueprint, and then I can go sideways and do whatever I want.
I think like also like your ears, like as your ears get trained, like you have sounds that you tend to like get drawn to. So like I really, when I am like in that first like hour or two, I really try and like not put any pressure. I just like fully want to like feel a vibe, be creative, get ideas out.
Yeah.
And just through like the process, like once you go from that creative first 2 hours, and then you kind of get more into like the mixing and engineering of it, shit just tends to kind of like come together. And however, you know, your ears are trained, I think, which I guess I never really thought about that before, but I think your ears just, you tend to gravitate towards certain processes, certain sounds, certain ways to like, you know, EQ things, for instance. So
it's like it's kind of like, and I think it's the same way. It's like the way that you view the world, or the way that you hear your own productions, is like totally unique, because like no one, you know,
for sure,
you know, ears notice the things that you do. So it's kind of like, especially for like a mix down like standpoint, like why certain people's like mixes sound, you know, different than others. It's like, you know, if you gave the same stems to two different producers at the same level, and you're like, both of you kind of mix this down, they're going to obviously end up with like different things. And it's like not like one's like right or wrong, it's just like that person's like interpretation
for sure.
of it.
And it's like totally impossible to like copy somebody else's like vibe, just because like psychologically it's just impossible. And there's like literally 10 billion things that you can do to an EQ8. So it's like you just kind of have to trust
the EQ,
process
bro.
of your I use it a lot, you know what I'm saying?
The EQ is the creative tool, baby.
No, for real. Like, and I even tell people that like in like my lessons too, is like you can do so much with like literally just an EQ in terms of like tonal stuff. So I don't know, you just have to like trust yourself and trust the process of like your ears getting trained and your knowledge kind of like getting better every single day. And eventually like things just sound more cohesive as you dive into it.
And I feel like
you give it some time.
Yeah. For sure.
What did you say? What did Heider say?
That you need to give it some time.
So
I mean,
sure.
just start producing, and
for sure.
You already know what you're going to do next.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and what's also funny, I don't know if you guys also like happen to notice this, but like when I hear other people's tracks now, for example, Jay Wara's latest Love Boy track, which I think is really cool.
Super awesome.
Yeah, shout out to her, but really cool track. But then like when I hear it, I'm already thinking, oh, this is dope. And if I would have made it, it would like, oh, this section would be, you know, after the first part of the drop, and I would put this lead like way wider and stuff. It just kind of like naturally happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, oh, I would have done it this way. Not that this is not cool, but that already implies that you kind of have your own like style and taste, because you like right away you want to like, no, you know, this should go there, and then this should do this and shit.
I think it's like difficult when I'm giving feedbacks to people. Like I want them to make their own music. I don't want them to make my music.
Yeah,
it's hard too, because like as the music producers, like sorry Millean, to cut you off. I was just gonna say, like, as like a music producer, like you can't even like we can't even like casually listen to music anymore. So you're just like in a you know, with some friends, listen to music in the living room, everybody's vibing out, and you're just like,
yo, that snare sounds
weird,
fucked. That's fucked, dude. For real.
I think it's kind of like liberating though, because like I think a lot of like producers, you know, once they kind of like figure out how to use a DAW, right, and like, you know, make a track, like a lot of them kind of like worry about this, like, oh, well, how do I distinguish myself, and like I need to come up with like this like hyper specific sound that's going to be really recognizable. But it kind of seems like everyone's on the same page that it's like once you've just been producing long enough, you just kind of like take in all these different techniques and ways of doing things, like, you know, by the people that you learn from. And then those are like, you know, a bunch of different sources, and you just kind of put those all together. And then like when you kind of spit out tracks, it's like that is your sound, and it's going to be like impossible for someone else to like get in your head and replicate that. And I think that's like super liberating, because it's like, oh, well, you don't really have to like, you know, think of something crazy different. It just kind of like naturally happens.
Yeah. I was curious, like, if this happened to, like, kind of in your guys' journey, but I never really felt like I had like a sound like at all. Like I always felt that like every single song sounded different. But I've had people be like, "Oh man, this is like classic Moose. Like this is a Moose track." I'm like, I don't really know what that means, but I guess it's kind of cool to hear that, like, you know, kind of goes back to like, you know, nobody's gonna hear your music like you just because like you're listening to it a billion times. So I guess you kind of got to step back and kind of like look at it from like a more like outside.
Yeah, it happened to me also, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, I think,
I don't hear it.
Yeah,
I think it's like super interesting.
Totally different.
I think it's super interesting with house music as well, because we all do make like, you know, a version of house music, because like in other genres, like you have like drum and bass and dubstep and even like EDM, I think there's such an emphasis on sound design, and like every track has like different leads, especially like dubstep, right? Like that's kind of like one of the core production processes, is like making, you know, these crazy futuristic sounds. And with like house music, there's like a lot of like, oh, let's go back to like the classics, and like let's use simple subtractive synthesizers where it's like you have a saw wave, a square wave, a sine wave, and it's like you kind of got to make stuff from there. So I feel like we don't differentiate as much with like sound. It's more like vibe and like little kind of like tiny differences between genres.
Yeah, it's more subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys like think like if you had to describe like your sound, like how would you guys describe it? Terrible.
Terrible shit music. No. I kind of know now, because it's like I only feel like I've recently, like since the like what you've done to me was the first track where I really feel like, okay, this feels like me. Because I've done some other tracks which because I did like a deep house kind of record when I first started to release music like seriously. And you know, it was okay. It was nothing revolutionary, but I really liked the songwriting I did there. Like I really like the chord progression I came up with, which was actually funny because I just bought a Moog Sub 25, like the one that everybody has but smaller. And it has like it's duophonic, so it only has two voices. So I just like the first thing I made out of that is because I had just like two keys to play with. I did weird things, and then I made like this super cool. Yeah, I made the super cool chord progression, which I'm still really proud of today, even though I had no idea what I was doing. And I really like the lyrics and how the song progressed, but just in general, the song wasn't really like amazing. It was nothing revolutionary. And then I did a remix for a friend of mine, which was like super tech housey, like a big horn and shit. And then with the like what you've done to me, I kind of like the first time I combined those things. So I had like a cool beat, but I also had like melodic elements which I really like, and like a progression in my bass line. It wasn't just like, you know, G sharp or whatever. So
you're talking about me.
Yeah. Yeah, just calling out every tech house producer in the world. But it's just funny because when I started on that track, I was the first instinct I had, because I had the folk when I was messing with it, and I played this progression, and because it felt good. But then the first thing I did was like, oh no, you know, I shouldn't do this progression because I'm making tech house and it should be more like the root and a few notes above. So I almost scrapped it, but then I was like, no, but I just really like this way this sounds, so I went on with it.
And that was your biggest success after that.
Yeah, that's how I kind of describe the way I make music now, or my sound, and you can hear that in oh wait, that might be spoiler. But
It's all good.
you can hear that in another track coming up. But it's basically, it's a bit more musical, I think, than most of the tech house songs that are being produced right now. It has a bit more progressions and a bit more melodic elements to. I don't know. I just found out that I really like that, and now I have people saying, "Oh, this sounds like something you made."
So you kind of like combined, different parts of different genres that you were liking, like the more kind of melodic aspect of deep house with like the more driving beats of like tech house. And I think that's something that like, maybe we'll talk about later of like tips for, newer producers to like find their sound. That's like one of like the best ones is like combine what you like from different genres and come up with like a new kind of sound that's like kind of unique to your taste.
Yeah, that's you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, you just have to grab stuff from other stuff. So yeah, I literally did that. I had the musical part from like the deep house, future house things, and then I had like the driving beats, and then I listened to John Summit's tracks like a lot, and I loved how viral they went and how everybody knew like the lyrics, and I was like, oh, I want to write lyrics that people can sing, so when the music plays, it's not just the house people that like it, but other people can like sing along with the lyrics. So I added that on it as well, and then you get like kind of where I am right now.
Super sick.
Yeah, I think on like the flip of that, like you can do a lot with like, signature sounds, even like from like layering, right? Like I think like I've listened to a lot of like demos lately that I just feel like are pretty like stale in terms of like, let's say somebody's looking to layer up a clap, right? They're going to go into Ableton, they're going to type the word clap in their search, go to find all, maybe do like one or two scrolls, and it's going to be like 2 909 style claps, So for me, like, I just think it's really interesting, like, especially with like the modern sampling that we can do today, you can literally turn anything into anything with EQs and just like other shit, So it's like, I really like to dig for like samples that make interesting like textures on top of each other. Like if I'm going to layer 3 claps, I want each clap to have a different tone, a different stereo width, or a different EQ shelf or something, and then together those 3 samples that I went and dug for and found automatically becomes like a sort of a signature sound in the way that I mix them or process them. Because the odds that's, somebody else, if I have 1 million samples in my folder, the odds that somebody's going to go find those exact layers that my ear is gravitating towards is like virtually impossible. So just like off of like layering, I really feel like you can, trust that, you have taste and your ear will gravitate towards certain sounds and processes. And the next thing you know, you have 16 bars of just some banging ass drums that have like a really interesting tone that isn't just, disposable 4 on the floor, boots and cats beat,
Yeah, I think like especially with like tech, like more underground focused like tech house, where there isn't as much maybe musicality and there isn't as much like kind of top lines and like synths. That's where like it gets people's sounds. Like if you ask like the average person like what the difference between like, I don't know, I'm just like thinking 2 examples, like a Josh Butler and like a Michael Beebe style track is like, they're like pretty similar in like style, right? So like, the average kind of fan like may not like know the difference, but like as a producer, like you can hear like little subtleties, like the way that Michael Beebe, like you said, like you picks very tonal, like specific drum sounds. Like I can listen to like a clap of his and be like, oh, that kind of has like that solid grooves, like clap vibe or things like that.
Sure.
So it doesn't like your sound doesn't always have to be a little like a more macro type thing. It can be more subtle, like just picking up small things that you do, like the way you layer stuff.
For sure. And even too, like, there's so much you can do in like arrangement that I feel like is overlooked. And in addition to arrangement, I guess like, tension kind of goes along with that, like what you can do in your breakdowns in terms of, snare rolls that you're using, or how you're washing out your drums as you're kind of pulling that tension back before it drops into drums. Like there's just, I don't know, I listen to some people's tracks, I'm just like, yeah, this is just like a classic, like even Summit's tracks, right? Like those breakdowns are huge, super washed out, super effects, like, you know, the drums are slowly being automated down in volume, or filters are closing while the white noise and effects are coming up, you know. So I don't know. I think your sound goes far further than just like, you know, melodic stuff. And
yeah, tension's
you know,
a great example.
Yeah, just like the, you know, more lead sounds that I guess, you know, like Marshmallow, right? That like pluck. It's a marshmallow pluck or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's just, especially with like our genre, like it just goes so much deeper than just like the sounds that are kind of on top of everything.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So sorry, I thought someone else was going to describe their sound. I can kind of describe mine. So for myself, it was like I've been producing like almost 10 years. So like obviously I feel like genre is like another thing. Like producers change genres a lot. Like it's very rare to find a producer that was like making the same like vibe or genre of music like their whole career. So I feel like one like interesting thing is like to see how a producer's kind of sound changes as they switch genre. Like do they bring things from their old genre to their new one? So like I definitely like made a little bit more, I don't even know what it would be called, but like the label that like kind of champions the sound would be like Dirty Bird. So like Dirty Bird has like a very kind of like wonky, weird type sound, very like funky vocals. Maybe not funky,
I
just
was
like
so
strange
much
vocals.
into it.
Yeah, like and like 2016, that was like my whole vibe. There were a couple other labels like This Ain't Bristol, Box of Cats, and like when you're making that kind of music, it's a lot about like synth one shots and ear candy and like these kind of, you know, LFO crazy lead sounds. And you know, I don't really make that style of music anymore, but I did for a while. So like even when I make stuff now, like there's definitely like techniques, like the kind of attention to details on like small synth ear candies that come in the drop. And like, you know, I learned a lot about like call and response with like melodies, like, you know, that's like something that like people really gravitate towards. And so like it's just like interesting to see how like as you change genres, like you still have like your core kind of like methods that you can apply in any genre. And like I see that a lot with like other producers, like Dylan Nathaniel, you know, he used to make like bass house. Now he kind of is like a pure like more underground tech house vibe, but like he still has that like warehouse kind of like underground feel to it. So I think it just kind of reinforces what we said before, that it's like you have, it's more about like your techniques in the studio and the way that you think about music and like tracks, rather than having this like one preset saved on your, you know, serum bank or something like that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I just think it goes back to like, you know, we all have unique ears, you know, and like your ear just gravitate towards certain sounds and ways of doing things. And like for you specifically, like though the older stuff is like a little bit different style, like I still hear, you know, like this is crazy. I was listening to that. You remember that track you made that was like blowing bubbles at the club?
Yes, with my own vocals, bro.
Oh, for real? I didn't
Yeah,
know.
that was like the only time I've ever like recorded vocals and processed it. But
Yeah.
yes, I do remember
So
that.
like that one, for instance, like though very different than some of the newer shit, like I really hear the similarities between call and response and just like the groove of it all, like how it all bounces, you know. But again, like that probably wasn't like an intentional thing.
No, it's like all subconscious kind of.
It's all subconscious, and like it's your ear, you know, that you developed over those 10 years of just making a shit ton of music. Like those processes just carry on, and next thing you know, like, you know, it's a Westend type beat, you know.
Do you guys like when you produce, do you like reuse a lot of sounds? Like, because I know personally, I don't like, and I'm only now starting to like kind of make folders where I save like sounds that I use like a lot. But like for almost every track, I would just kind of use like different drums. Like I would go through different like presets. But I do know that like some people like, you know, like to reuse some of the same sounds, and like that can help kind of like signify certain things. But yeah, do you guys like reuse stuff and like save presets, or do you like kind of look for new ones for each track?
I like I didn't used to do that, but now I do. Like because it's more of, it was the same. I was just scrolling every time and just finding stuff that I felt at the moment, and I have this like library of like really old samples from like CDs and shit, which I went in a lot, and you find crazy stuff in there. But now, like, I have like all the what you've done to me clap and hats and effects like stored somewhere. So when I start like a new idea, I almost always like throw the clap in because I know it just sounds really good. And then I layer other stuff on top of it. But like the core like snappiness of or whatever is always like great right away. And same for like the drop effects. You know, I have like the same white noise thing that I put in there, and it just sounds good. Like it's just that's just it. And then I don't, maybe later I swap it out, but it's just right away. It's just, I don't have to like look for so long to find a nice riser or whatever, you know, it's like stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't really use much stuff, but I definitely have my go-to packs. So I have like my 4 or 5 packs on the side, and I know that if I want a hat, I go to that pack. If I want a clap, I go to that pack. If I want a kick, and that's the way I do it. The one thing I save a lot sometimes are like bass patches or stuff like that, because if I spend like 2 hours making a fucking bass patch and I want to maybe reuse it later in another track, I want to have it again. So yeah.
And if it works, like what's the point of like changing it? You know what I mean? If it's like, if you know it's gonna sound
2 hours to make it again.
Yeah.
It's like more.
Yeah, that's kind of funny though, because I never save like, well, I save them, but I never like reuse my bass patches because whenever I look for like bass sounds, that's usually when I find something that's like funny sounding or like weird. And then I'm like, okay, you know, let me try this. And then if I would try the same thing again, I will create a similar, very similar MIDI. I automatically do that because I'm like, and then I'm like, what you mean. You know,
the thing I do, the main reason maybe I do that is because I tend to make a lot of tracks, like many tracks, because it doesn't take long to me. I'm quite fast, I would say, but many of those are not ending up to being like a final release track. So if I want to keep a cool element from that track, it's cool. Yeah. It's good to have it.
Okay, I do that though. Yeah, I have all my projects, and I have like if people don't know that, you can add your project folder where you save all your Ableton files. You can add it to your places, and then you can like scroll through, and you can grab like stems or elements from.
I like just learned about that. It's been a game changer.
I do it so much. Yeah.
It's sick. Especially like just getting ideas started too. Like if I'm like, damn, I really like that kick of that one track, I'm just gonna drag that shit in.
And you drag it back in. I do that. I do that a lot as well because but I need to get better at that because I don't make a lot of tracks. Like I try, but I tend to only continue like make an actual demo out of it when I think it's fire. And I have a lot of times where I'm just like starting from like you know, some loop or some vocal filtered or whatever, just something, and I start doing it and I don't find that one thing that makes it go like, okay, this is the idea, and I'm just like, trash it, I just try something else.
It's
the same for me.
No, I was just gonna say producing is such a mind fuck,
dude.
It's
depressing. Like just the way if for sure it's like,
don't say that.
No, it just in the way that like, I don't know, I try not to like put a date or a time on like creativity anymore. Like I really just like let my inspiration just kind of come to me, whether that's at 8 p.m. after I took a little THC gummy or fucking 10 a.m. after I like get back from the gym. Like it just depends. But like, especially now, like I've been doing it like full time for a couple months. Like I just literally have all day to like sit on my computer and figure out like when I'm gonna do shit. And so I just kind of like, you just kind of let it like come to you. It sounds like kind of whatever, but I just try not to force it, you know.
I do think this is. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think we definitely need to do like another podcast episode just on like kind of like production, like motivation and like creativity, because I think that's something that a lot of producers like struggle with. And like when I listen to some other podcasts and people talk about like big producers talk about like, you know, being dry in the studio for like months on end, and you're like, oh, it's like very relatable. And I think there's like so much we can dive into on just like motivation and like, how many tracks you write versus like what's gets signed, and how many shitty tracks you write versus like the ones that are like good. But yeah, what were you gonna say, Millean?
Yeah, that I think it's a really important topic for like people that for all people, but especially when you're like just starting or you've been at it for a while but not too long, and like nobody has great ideas all the time. Like nobody, everybody is goes to studio and just messes around and it's nothing, and you're like, fuck, but you just end up seeing the polished release, so everybody thinks, oh my god, like they're so creative and they're so amazing, and it's in reality you spend you should see like the bin on my Mac, like it's fucking terrible.
I think like people have to talk about that more too, because it's like even like the stuff you see on the internet, like the track breakdowns or the people that like make something like on the fly, like you don't even know if that's like even those are like the examples that are like the kind of the best of the pick. And like even like I've seen like Chris Lake on like stream, like whenever in the pandemic, when everyone's like streaming, like you'll see a lot of them, and then it's just like like it's not that good, you know what I mean? It's like it's really just the best of the best that
exactly this is exactly my point, because I watched those streams as well.
And you're just like, oh, that's actually not that good, and then like you start to feel like better, because it's like it's you often listen to like other producer stuff and you're like, how do you get to that level? But it's like Disclosure is the only example that are like they can make a beat at any time and it's
they're wizards.
Fire.
I stopped watching those streams.
You feel pretty bad about yourself after that.
But also those Chris Lake streams, like he would be like, man, this sucks. So I'm just sitting there like,
all the time.
That does not suck.
Yeah, but it's funny
sucks.
because he was doing like, sometimes he was making a loop with like there's this one stream, I don't remember, it was for Amazon, I think. But it began with him on a loop with like it wasn't even like a house beat. It was like doom ka doom doom ka, and it had this like fairy arp going over it. It was just terrible.
It's like weird.
Like, what the hell are you doing? But he's just like, that's what I do. I just sit and I just kind of do what I think is cool at the moment. And if it's dog shit, I just trash it.
His process is cool though. Like he'll just like open up like Omnisphere, which is like not a plugin that I feel like a lot of people use in like our genre, and just start writing MIDI chords and fucking with shit until something lands. But also like he'll work on it for 30 minutes, and then for the first 10 minutes you're just like, dude, what the fuck is he doing? And then at the end of that, like 20 minutes later, he kind of figures out how to put it together. It's like, all right, there it is.
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with like catching like his sound is more about like the vibe, and you can obviously see from like the way he works in the studio, it's more about like finding that secret sound that like is like fresh and new, that like is not what everyone else is doing at the time, and then kind of like using that as like an anchor to make the whole track around. So like there is a kind of like goes back, it's like there is like a method to the madness, so to speak, and like it doesn't always result in like a Beatport number one, but like it's more about like if you do this enough over time, it's like he trusts the process in himself that like it'll good ideas will come from that method.
And just to add on to that too, like I feel like the producers that are like doing their own thing and like really stick to that are the ones that are going to see success, because like the minute that you start like trying to like morph your sound into like somebody else's, you're already so like late, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be left behind. Like if you have a sound that's a little bit different, you just got to like be patient and like wait for your time, because that shit's going to like get hot one day, so you just got to like keep to your shit and just do what you do. And like
you need to find a balance between what's trendy and what's
for sure.
That's what I was going to ask. So like what do you guys think about obviously for people that have been producing for a little bit, there's always like kind of like what's hot at the moment, whether it's like a genre thing or like a specific sound within a genre that is kind of like what's doing well in the charts, blah blah blah. Do you think that like there's a way to kind of find a balance of meeting the mainstream and also doing what's you? Or like it seems like Moose, like you were saying, it's better just to do your own thing and kind of like hope that one day that people catch on to that. Like for me personally, I've always like kept an ear on like what's kind of like the next big thing in the genre that I'm making, and I've always tried to take elements of that and incorporate in my music, because I do think it's important to kind of especially if you're trying to get music signed on labels, like the labels kind of want stuff that's going to sell and that it'll stream well. But I think there is a way to do it where you can like still have your own sound and like kind of like adapt it to what's working at the moment.
Yeah, you can do it tastefully, let's say.
Yeah.
Tastefully, that's a good word.
At the end of the day, you always need to confront yourself with the market, because I mean it's a business at the end of the day. Other than the art part, there is the business part, and I think you need to find a good way to merge them together. And so I mean you should never like try and make something that is not you totally, because at the end of the day you're gonna get burnt out, I think, as an artist. So I think it's a matter of finding a good balance.
But you're gonna get burned out. I really like that expression you use, because that's what's gonna happen is when you start chasing like a sound, because you it's popular and you also want to be popular, like, of course, but you're gonna get burned out. It's gonna be very like in some sense you're gonna get like sad, because you're like doing something and it's not really gonna work because it's not you. So for example, I don't know if we were to all start doing like slap house tracks when that was like exploding, it wouldn't but like it wouldn't make us happy. Like maybe we would even score a hit in that because we know how it works and whatever, but it would just be very tiring because you don't love that, and you can definitely shape along with the wave. So like when tech house so more and more are like these little tech house songs that are becoming like popular, like 2:30 like to 2:40. That's like becoming
like the radio edit, you mean?
The radio, like for the snow, and that's like the main one on Spotify, you know what I mean? So that's the song that's going to be on Spotify, which didn't used to be like that, because back like like even a year or two ago, it was like the extended mix was on Spotify as well, like it was fine. But now more and more people are starting to do like these little edits for 2:30, and that's as brand that as the main thing, and then have the extended for the DJs. And I mean, like, what's what you want to say?
I think that's just a manifestation of the fact that you have like the art and the market, the edits are for the market or for the audience, and for the casual listeners maybe. I think that's the thing.
Well, I think it's great, and I think it's like more and more people are getting into house music now. More and more people getting into house, more and more people getting into techno. Like it's becoming more mainstream. And what's kind of happening is that not all those people like are have an attention span for that long for a song. They're not really into house, to just kind of like it. And what happened and what's still happening is like just like the songs are getting shorter. Like the radios are 2:30. That's nothing. So what you can do, you can shape with that in some way, because what I did is I used to make I really became like a house person like 2 years ago. That's when I really started to like, oh, house is fucking amazing. And I made all these extended mixes, and I had this this guy was my manager now, but he used to produce a lot of stuff back in the day, and he was like, what you should do, what I think, more and more people are going to go into house, like you should try to make like shorter radio edits, because I think it will be very accessible. It's kind of like that pop influence, pop structure, but with your, and I was like, no, because house is cool and it's 6 minutes and nothing. But now I'm starting to see, what he kind of meant, and it does work like that. Look at all Gus tracks and Ferric Dawn's tracks, like those do crazy, but they're all like 2 minutes something.
Plus, like with Spotify, like they're the ones that are the big tastemakers for like the editorial playlist. Like the odds that they're gonna put a 6-minute track with a 1.5-minute extended mix on that top of that playlist is probably unlikely, because that first like 10 seconds, like there's got to be like a a hook or a fuck off moment where people are like, ooh, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a great example of like, how, and I think Hader, you said this before with like the market versus like the art. It's like you still can like find ways to like, even if I kind of write extended mixes to start, but then like sometimes you're just like, all right, how do I fit this whole kind of mood and like song that I made into like 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes? And it's like you are kind of like compromising in certain sections, like maybe you can't do all this automation that you wanted, or like your drop can't be like 32 bars, it's got to be like 16 bars to like fit it. But you are kind of like morphing your sound with like where the trend is going. Because like when I was thinking about that was more of like a genre thing, but you're right, like the arrangement and structure of music is also something that like people compromise with.
I think you shouldn't compromise too much because like I used to be like a big room EDM DJ. I used to play that stuff, and at a certain point it was like you were playing a track for 45 seconds and that was it.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like a big sub down,
and then my first track.
Tomorrowland, how you feeling?
I'll link you my first track here.
No, please.
I used to do progressive house and electro house, which is not like the big room days was definitely different, but I think it's also like TikTok. Like people just like attention spans are now like 15 seconds long.
Short.
Dude, so it's like everything is
Tyler,
shortening.
When you do your like radio, I guess it's a question for anybody. Are you messing with like the actual like body of the arrangement? Because usually I'll just like chop off the extended, go into that first breakdown. Like, are you like making like that first drop section shorter to fit?
That's a good question. So I used to like not think about it at all, and it would just be, okay, if I have a 5-minute track, I can cut off like a minute of the intro and outro, and now I have a 3-minute track. But I started to like think, and this is mostly because like once I finished the extended mix, I was kind of like lazy. I didn't want to like have to go back and like
completely
mess with it. But like I think like I did a track with on Glasgow Underground, Get This Party Started, and Kevin McKay, who's the A&R, he was like, how like everyone in house music does stuff in like 8 bars. So he was like, oh, you should do this in like 4 bars. And like it was just like blew my mind at the time, because I was like, well, no one does like build-ups like 4 bars or things like that. But like you really like the things that you think about as a producer, like the radio edit is like really just for the average listener, like the people listening in like the mall that put on like the playlist or whatever. And so like I kind of like think about it more of like what, like you don't want any like filler space in the song. You want every second to count. And so like if I feel like there's something that's not super like adding to the track, I'll kind of take it out. And it's different for every song. Like sometimes I just chop off the intro outro and it works fine, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I gotta like really tell the story here and move the vocal down earlier so that the vocal comes in right at the start. So it really depends.
Yeah, and to add on to that, like I actually now I start with the radio. That's how I worked on a track with Tyler, and I sent him the stems, and it was the radio. Like you made the extended later.
Yeah, afterwards.
Because that's how I work now. Because I when I do it that way, I know that I've captured like something that's interesting throughout the entire, like every second matters, and there's no, like you said, there's no filler. There's no point where it's like, not that it's like shit or whatever, but there's no point where it's like I'm waiting on something. There's something happening. And when I have that, it's easier for me to just add like an intro and an outro and maybe stretch one section a bit than to do it the other way around, because then I've made something and then cut out, and it's possible, but I find it easier to just make it like quick and cool and stuff happening and then later add more to it.
I feel like I tend to do it the opposite way, just because I feel like when I'm like making music, I'm mostly like, my first thought is like, how is this going to translate in like a set, So it's like, those sets are going to be like very drawn out, like drum head. Like realistically, you could play 6 minutes of like drum, not 6 minutes. You could play like 3 minutes of just drums, and like it could rock the club. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess
You just
yeah,
gotta
there's
do
different
like you
ways to
gotta do
do
like
it.
the high pass and then like throw
Yeah,
it
for
back
real.
in and then you're all good.
Reverb, drop. Yeah,
You,
no,
you can do
but
the trick with the echo on the DJM. You just use it on
yeah,
the lows, and you have
yeah,
the rolling
for
bass
sure.
like techno.
And I guess that also kind of goes back to the whole like, what your sound is and like what your, how your music kind of like, ends up becoming. And I guess like for me, it's more like emphasis on the drums, and then I kind of build, the vibe around that. But I don't know.
Writing
Just-
club music is so different than writing like
So different.
streamable. I hate saying it like that because
Yeah.
it's like there's really no like difference. But like things that work in clubs, like you could hear it on like your AirPods or like in the car, and you're like, "What the fuck is this?
What
like,
the
this
fuck,
sounds
dude?
like
For
shit."
real,
And then it's like Carl
For
Cox is
real.
dropping it, and it's like,
Yes.
all right, that repetitive loop just sounds insane. So it's like
Yeah.
that's why I think
Or-
it's so important for DJs to like go out and like producers to go out and like go to festivals and go to clubs and like
Yeah.
listen to what works, because
Yeah.
you just like need that education,
Dude,
that knowledge.
every time I go to a club and I like listen to tracks, I'm just like, dude, nothing matters. There's no rules. Like there's
Yeah.
like I could make like the nastiest sounding shit. Like I remember, I forget, somebody tweeted this, but it was like, have you ever like gotten like a track on in flight and you're just like, yo, you're listening to it on your headphones, you're like, dude, this is trash. Like I would never play this. And then like huge DJ drops it in a club, crazy
Yeah.
reaction, and you're
Yeah,
just
you
like,
start
damn,
playing it again.
I did not hear it
I
like
had
that.
the opposite. I kind of like found a really cool track when listening in my studio. Then I put it on during the night, and nobody's fucking with it.
You know,
It
I
happens
have
all the
that
time.
with the Kush track by Gus, and Ferg is on it as well, I think.
Yeah.
Like the not the track itself, but the mix. Like I was listening to that on my speakers in the studio and headphones. I was like, dude, this is mixed
harsh.
so weird.
It's
It's
hard.
Yeah.
it's so strangely mixed.
I thought that too. They made that what, like 4 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah,
Didn't they like just
well,
get that
I
shit
think-
going?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, this is so the kick's like super flat, or it's so weird. And then I heard Gus play it, and I was like, oh,
No, I get
okay,
it.
I
okay,
get it.
The environment,
Yeah, the way it
matters,
translates.
the listening
yeah.
environment.
For sure.
Cool guys. So I know we're like kind of running towards the end on time. I wanted to do maybe just a section to talk about tips if you're a producer on like how to find your sound, or ways or techniques to kind of think about it and develop it. Because I know like that is a topic that a lot of people ask me about, and it's a topic that a lot of people worry about. So I guess I'll start. I would say that if you're like a newer producer, like don't worry about having any distinctive sound or like recognizable pattern between their songs. I think in like the first couple, years or months as a producer, it's like more important to just get good at production and like know your way around the tools and the DAWs, and finish as much music as possible. But I would say like once you're kind of happy with like your ability to make a track and like your mixes are like decent, and you're starting to think about like, all right, what do I want my brand to be like? What kind of genre do I want to work in? Like one thing that I used to do that I found really helpful was I would like take elements from artists that I like a couple different artists, and kind of like combine them. So like maybe around like 2017 when I was doing that like Dirty Bird style house, I like some of my favorite artists at the time were like Kyle Watson, who has a very distinctive kind of synth call and response in his drops. That's like if you listen to one of his songs, or a bunch of his songs, you can kind of notice that pattern. So I really like him. I really like Walker and Royce as well, who have like these super kind of major chords like running through their track, and like these long trippy breakdowns. So I would kind of like, what I would do is like I would take like a little bit of this artist's type of sound, a little bit of this artist's drums, and like the arrangement style from this track, and kind of like try to combine it. And then if you do a process like that, just like mathematically, it's going to be pretty rare that someone else is with all the options of genres and artists is going to come up with something that's similar to you. And then if you do, if those are artists you love and that's the music you love to make, what the fuck is that? I don't know what that is, but if you do all that, then like you kind of end up with like a unique type sound. And I feel like for me, it kind of took a lot of pressure to like make my own synths or anything like that. So that's my tip. is just combine stuff from artists you like from different genres and try to kind of come up with like your own new genre or sound.
I think that's like that's right on the money there for every beginning producer. If you don't know where to start there. Just grab like 4 tracks. Okay, I'm taking the drums from this one and like the sound thingy from this one and whatever, combine it. And I guess I'd add on to that. Definitely let your ear like guide you, and that's kind of vague, but I mean, like, I know everybody who's probably like in kick and bass wants to be a tech house producer because, you know, most of the people in here have that vision. But if you're making a song and your hand or your ear or whatever goes to more of a progression or maybe more of a trancey sound or whatever, follow it. Like, don't be like, I'm not going to do that, even though I like it, because I want to be a tech house producer. Just follow your ears. If that sounds good, just do it.
Yeah, you don't 100%. Need to tunnel vision yourself.
Yeah.
You need to be open to options.
Also, too, I really enjoy, if I'm feeling not creative, I'll open up Ableton and I'll just try and make some like different shit. Like, fuck it, I'm gonna like try and make hard techno today. I don't know what that means, but I'm gonna put the BPM to 145 and just like see what happens. You know, like I took like a Ableton class in college just because I needed like a free credit. It was kind of like a blow off, but I used that time to like make different genres. So like, you know, I made like a hip hop track and, you know, some like beats, or like, you know, there was one challenge where you had to like, you know, record on your iPhone for like a minute somewhere and then make a track out of just those sounds. So like I went into the car and started, you know, started like banging around, turn the car on, like, you know, turn the radio on, and then just taking that minute and just like morphing it all into like some sort of beat. Like just doing stuff like that, like really just helps you just like flex your creativity and flex the possibilities of what you can do in Ableton. And the possibilities are literally endless, you know what I mean? So you can do anything.
Slap an EQ on there.
Slap on EQ on shit. Like, you know, you can do so much with like modern music production. So, you know,
I think that's great because it's like, especially like trying other genres. Like a lot of genres have certain techniques. For example, like if you're making techno, you know, like they have like the way they do bass lines in techno is very, very, very different than like house music. It's like a totally different, you know, style and sound design. And it's like when you try to learn a new genre, you know, if you're watching tutorials on that, or, you know, download a project file, whatever it is, like you'll kind of pick up new techniques, and those techniques you can then bring back to, you know, the main genre you produce or the main sound you make. So yeah, I definitely do that a lot. I should do it more because I used to make drum and bass, like everything, like future bass, like literally all that stuff. And I have only made house for the last 3 years. And I feel like just trying something else, like you kind of pick up some cool techniques.
Party time VIP.
Yep.
That's that shit was hard, bro.
My fake drum.
You did the opposite of what the tech house guys.
My manager
was like half of the scene from the UK used to be like drum and bass guys, and they came to tech house.
Eli Brown used to do drum and bass.
Maximono as well.
Yeah, so the guy from Maximono and Eli Brown, they were Lodestar together. And it was like a sick drum and bass group.
I see that with side pieces as well, right? Because those two people, like
side pieces and
Party Favor. Yeah.
Nitty Gritty. Nitty Gritty can do like any
I think.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's a great example. So it's like, just to kind of like wrap this up. Those are two guys that made, you know, mostly like bass kind of oriented music or like EDM, and then they make tech house, and you know, they obviously, like, a lot of the elements of their song are very like tech house oriented. You know, the arrangement, the drums, the bass, like the vocal samples, but they also like use a lot of like the synth stuff that they did probably in their other projects. And it's like now they have like the side piece sound, which is you know, a pretty like identifiable kind of sound in tech house. So, you know, they moved from a different genre, brought their probably production techniques and stuff to the new genre, and now they have their own.
You can usually tell what the producer was doing before coming into the tech house thing.
What they're good at and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. Well, I think this was super sick. I think, you know, we learned a lot about finding your own sound, and yeah, we definitely got to do another one of these.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for
Down.
sure.
This is
Well,
lit.
what should the next topic be?
I don't know.
like
We were
the-
talking about the workflow things.
Workflow stuff.
Yeah, maybe like creativity, like just like things to, or like inspiration we can do.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that it's like technical in some sense. Like we go over, but it's not like super technical because that's like what the kick and bass videos are for. This is more just like kind of motivational stuff and like what it's like to be a producer. And I feel like not a lot of people talk about that. It's more like, oh,
exactly, and it's really important.
how do you mix this? But like at the end of the day, production is such like a battle against your mind and like your doubts and fears and stuff. So it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we can help people with that. I think that's sick. But all right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow.